those simple tasks.
Okay, so first I want to thank everybody for joining us here today. This is a pretty cool, neat experience. This is our first time all pulling together here with this group. So give you guys, those of you who are tuning in on Facebook Live, really excited you guys could join us here today. This is our celebration for, boldness, passion. So many of us are just sort of caught up right now in this, the stay-at-home orders, right? And it's so easy to get so just trapped in negativity, and there's so much fear going around right now. And fear, as we all know, is super contagious and starts spreading like wildfire. And I just sat there thinking, what could we do to, kind of live that Mother Teresa quote, to be the change we want to see in the world. Like, I firmly believe in positivity and living life in boldness and life of adventure and life of passion. And that's something, and I was like, well, where did I pick that up? So much of it for me came back to my experiences with Mike Sullivan. So I wanted to kind of channel this in his honor, since he's no longer with us in physical body anymore. And so I want to thank you guys for joining this celebration. If you've never met Mike, that's totally fine. We're still going to be just celebrating his boldness, passion, and purpose. And that was a gift he gave to us. And a lot of the folks I have featured here today are all deeply touched by his life. So we'll be hearing from Toby Schwimmer and Colleen and Scott, and then as well as Nico. So super excited for that. So to kind of start us off, I just wanted to kind of, tell a little bit of a story about Mike himself and how my path interconnected with him. Mike was the type of person you meet on a climber's message board in Kathmandu. I mean, literally, that's where I ran into him. I was like 21. I was right out of college on this first mind-blowing trip to the Himalaya, and with a buddy, and we needed a third person to round out our rope team. And so Dave and I were kind of sniffing around Kathmandu, and we found out this climbers group. We put up a board, and there was Mike Sullivan's ad. And he just come down from spending 6 months up in Tibet doing solar installations at these remote monasteries. He'd been hired by a Hong Kong philanthropist. And he had just, then came overland from Tibet in a truck into Kathmandu, and had just these 2 huge green duffels that he carted everywhere with him, and just stories and stories, and my eyes got this big. And so Mike was lived that life with passion. He literally climbed 744 mountains on 4 continents. I mean, he literally has a whole document. If we get bored, we might go through that. It's sort of fascinating. And one of my favorite jokes he used to say is about, I'm here to live. I like to work 24/7. 24 hours a week, 7 months a year. And that was his joke, but I think that conveyed his lifestyle. But at the same time, he wasn't serious about that. Having seen Mike work on these solar projects, when he worked in service of other people, because he truly believed in solar as a renewable way of sustaining this planet, our energy needs, he was all in. I mean, he literally, during the cholera epidemic, flew down to Haiti and outfitted hospitals with solar, because everything had been wiped out by the hurricane. And so there was, hurricane devastation, cholera epidemic going on. He literally risked his life to help other people. That just sort of, blew me away. And then we did 4 solar projects in Tibet and Ladakh together. And when he worked on those, I just got a message.
Yeah,
hey, okay, we're back live again. Not sure what happened there, but we're going to keep rocking with this. So 1 second, I don't know what the technical difficulties just were, but as I say, I was talking about doing 4 solar projects with Mike in Tibet and Ladakh. So what I like to do is, and what, to step back, what I think is so important about Mike is that the attitude towards work, about living that life with boldness and purpose and meaning. And when I met him, he just come down and done this crazy adventure, but he just, previous to that, to committing himself to solar, he'd been working in Los Alamos doing high-end engineering. And he spent his whole 20s clawing up that ladder, and literally was doing he designed the systems that could detect the yield and megatonnage of an underground nuclear detonation. So super high-end work, but that life didn't connect with him. He would sit there in that cubicle in that office, and that just didn't feel right to him. And he, literally had this folder called IHTFJ, I hate this effing job. And he would look through that folder and wish for something else, some life that wasn't bound by a cubicle, wasn't about bowling leagues, was about adventure. So that really resonated with me. And so I'd like to share just a little bit of his photography, a bit of pictures. This is a short 3-minute video I'm going to stream for you guys. You're going to hear Mike again talk about his experience of committing to his dream of living boldly, passionately, and with purpose. So without further ado, let me cue that up here. Hold on, share screen, boom. Boom.
Just felt sort of chained to the job. I needed to get the money because I had this big house with a mortgage, and I had a wife and a child that were expecting to have all the cash for the $400 phone bills and whatnot. I shouldn't harp on that. It really wasn't that big of a deal. But yeah, I just felt like, I had to work here. At this point, I'm like 30 years old, 29 years old, thinking I just do this every day, well, only 4 days a week, so it's not as bad as some people have it, but basically this is what I do for the next 4 decades, then I retire and I live for 10 years and then I drop dead, and it just seemed like, the hamster wheel approach to life, and didn't seem like I was doing what I wanted to do, what I could be doing. Not that I was even sure what I wanted to do, but it just seemed like it wasn't that.
So you would sit in your office and just stare at the clock and think about this?
Sometimes. Eventually I'd like, damn, I ought to get some work done. But, it really depended. During phases of the job where shit had to get done, then it was easy to motivate to get it done. There were phases of the job where I was, doing some intricate design of equipment or figuring out how to write software to do such and such a thing efficiently. That was interesting, and I could, it was easy to motivate to do that. But when it was time to get a bunch of papers ready for a design review or go review somebody else's design, and just sit in a meeting for all day, that was like, oh my God, what am I doing here?
So the meetings were just talking heads, you'd tune it out?
Pretty much, yeah. Or, my body would be in the meeting and my mind would be traversing a ridge along the Sangre de Cristo somewhere.
So awesome. So Toby, can I tap on you to tell us a story?
Sure. Hey, everybody who's out there who I can't see, but my name is Toby Swimmer. I'm a friend of Mike's and the extended family, and I'm honored to be in this community. As we're all lucky to have known Mike and to have that positive influence in our lives still, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to connect with all of you virtually, albeit at this time. But thank you, Chris, for putting this together. It's very timely and important that we can feel united in this otherwise divisive or isolating time. So thank you. And yeah, I guess I'll tell you all of the story of how I met Mike and and how that has shifted the course of my life and continues to be a positive role model in my life. So in 2014, I was in university and studying renewable energy technology, and never was really keen on the classroom environment. Felt like I always did my most learning out there in the world, and kind of dropped out of school a couple of times and was sort of determined to get through it, but looking all the while for other options, other ways to do life than kind of the straight and narrow. And I was finishing up a semester abroad in Argentina when I was traveling through Patagonia, and had hitchhiked all the way from Mendoza, well, really all the way from the city of Buenos Aires all the way into the Andes and then south into El Chalten, which is a good ways south along the Andes. And I met Mike on a stormy evening in El Chalten. This is a kind of a climbing outpost, or the town nearest to approach the El Chalten Massif, Fitzroy Massif. And I was in this hostel coming in from the rain and cold, and there's this one other gringo in this small kitchen, and he's this kind of lanky, dirty, like middle-aged dude that greeted me with a big warm smile. And you know, we got to talking, and it turns out that we had a lot in common, and I was pretty blown away by to hear his story once he slowly began to sort of open up. I was kind of prodding, "Hey man, what are you doing out here? You know, who are you? You know, what's your hat say?" And it was wearing an SEI hat, which is the company he worked for. And it turns out he was on the job, based out of that hostel, teaching an online solar class to Chileans, and meanwhile climbing mountains in his off days. And I was just really blown away by his character and felt drawn to him, and you know, wanted to remain in touch. And we did keep in touch. And when I finished college, then the following year, I basically took to the road and moved into my Toyota truck and sort of teamed up with Mike. And I don't know if he ever officially acknowledged, but he sort of knew, or it felt like it was very much kind of a mentorship relationship. And I was just kind of following him around the country from Colorado to California, and zigging and zagging, just following good rock. And yeah, we camped together and shared stories and climbed a lot together. And he basically showed me the ropes, and in a lot more levels than just with climbing. You know, hearing a little bit about his adventures, his life path, and him imparting some wisdom in me that I feel I was really yearning for and receptive to, and continue to realize some of the value of the things that he was sharing, even just in the way that he was living. You know, without words, his message was and continues to resonate. And I mean, I'm forever grateful for Mike's presence in my life, and in connecting with all of his people, I'm learning of the ways that he's enriched the lives of so many others. And you know, I was fortunate enough to go on one solar project with Mike in 2016, and Chris, and a handful of others, to see him in his element, in a different element, because we've climbed a lot together and worked on a couple of off-grid projects during those few months we traveled together. But seeing him just glowing in the Himalaya, and just, you know, communicating with locals and with the monks and with our contact there, and just seeing him thriving in that culture. And I got to experience a whole other side to Mike that was something that was always kind of glowing in him, or sort of shining through, but it was just beautiful to be amongst Mike in his element, you know, in the Himalaya, where I feel like he felt really at home. And yeah, I just am really, really grateful for having seen that, to get a glimpse to a life that's more than just this sort of self-centered life. And all of us maybe are confronted with that sort of dichotomy of doing what we love and how we can also connect that with others or do something that's selfless. And Mike's he nailed it. I mean, he just had that balance dialed in, and so it seemed, and I'm sure it wasn't always easy, but there's a lot of sacrifice involved with that. But Mike was someone who really embodied a selfless and giving life in his act of service, and in his balance of I like to think of it as sort of recharging in the mountains as he would go on his, have his solitude and then just, being it to others. So that as a legacy, I feel like as one element of Mike's legacy is his service and his balance, his dance of recharging and shining as he did so well. Is something that I continue to take inspiration from. And I think Mike's lesson to me is that of presence, that of presence and mindfulness, something that he lived and embodied, and that we just slowly are coming around to little by little. But these memories of of dear friends and continuing this legacy and this conversation, this dialogue, and sharing it with one another is a beautiful thing and a good way forward. So I'm just grateful to Mike for just walking the walk.
And Toby, if I can jump in here too, I want to just celebrate you, because I totally see that you are living that same boldness and passion and thirst for adventure. There's this spark in you that is so powerful. And, I'll never forget just the last time you and I saw each other in person. I was living in my place in Durango, and you roll up in this kind of black, 1980s van. It looked like the A-Team van, like many years later, many miles, this thing's rusted out. I mean, if you could get $1,000 for that van, I'd have been impressed. It was a classic, child molester looking van. And you pop out with this huge smile on your face. And you'd somehow roped into, then out pops these two other guys. One was an Australian and an Italian, and that you'd met in Yosemite Valley. And next thing you know, these, strangers that you'd known for like 3 weeks, or I don't know, a few weeks, were suddenly your new best friends. And you guys were like this pack of, like big grinning, life living, climbing machines. And we all went out in the, in the desert, and did this amazing slot canyon. But it was just such a cool way to see you in your element. You were just thriving, like you were just pulsating with energy and living this bold life of simplicity. Because how long was that road trip for you when you were in that van?
About a year.
Yeah, living simply, living passionately. What was that like to be in that van? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's good. It was just sort of like one rendition of a traveling, I don't know, I guess the lifestyle. I've lived out of 3 vehicles now, and I just bought a 4th, a latest rendition. So I've got upgrades since then. But yeah, living in that van was a riot. I mean, I pretty much, it was a good time. When Mike passed, I quit my job pretty much that week and bought that van, and just said, I have no time to waste. I need to get to it. Just keep climbing and kind of keep moving, because that was really where I wanted to be, and it seemed like there was no good excuse to not be living that life. And I think knowing Mike gave more meaning to what I was doing. It gave more validation in some way, or more. It was his life was a guide in a lot of ways, and continues to be. But me and Francis the van, we covered some ground. We went all the way out to California and down to Mexico and the East Coast, and sort of connected a lot of dots. And Scott and Colleen also were a jumping off point for me. They helped with the purchase of the van, actually, and hosted me great, and sort of got me fired up for Yosemite, which was the first stop. And that was a really expansive time for me, and in a lot of ways, you know, physically and mentally. But Mike's been a huge motivation in continuing to kind of live the life and dream the dream.
I love it. I love it. And speaking of Scott and Colleen, I think we're going to jump into you guys here. And that's a perfect transition because, you know, Toby, to me, you represent like the youthful energy, like the 20s I wish so many of us had. Like, because you lived it. You were like, you got your degree. You said, I'm not doing the cubicle thing. I'm buying Francis. I'm buying the van. I'm going to, you know, Patagonia and Tibet and India. And you just went for it. You know, I just applaud that with you. But most of us aren't in our 20s, right? You know, and Scott and Colleen, you've done an amazing job of, you know, holding down the job. I mean, you guys have, you know, like you're a professor, and Colleen, and you contribute to people's lives through education and teaching, something I'm, as a fellow professor, I'm also passionate about. But you guys are also just living large as well with boldness and passion. Whenever I see your Facebook feed, you know, you're deep in the Wasatch, you know, slaying powder, or you're up at, you know, climbing somewhere, or mountain biking or hiking, and you're just living these adventures. So I just want to, you know, turn the camera over to you guys and, you know, and share with us a little bit of your story.
Well, my story of meeting Mike isn't as glamorous. We weren't in the Himalayas. I was actually in a yoga class at the Momentum Climbing Gym. And I had left a really tight-knit community where I'd lived for 20 years and then moved to Utah. And I call that it was a lot of personal growth, but it was also one of the loneliest periods of my life. My husband was still working in Sacramento. And so I moved to Provo, which has a very different culture than what I was used to. And I was just having a difficult time finding partners, really, to climb or to backcountry ski. And so I did my favorite class at Momentum, and Mike and I ended up meeting. And he told me he was a backcountry skier, and I was so excited. And he ended up moving in with me a month later and renting a room. And but then unfortunately it didn't snow in Wasatch, and so we did a couple of tours together. But then he went north to Canada, and we stayed in contact, and he would just send me these pictures. It was the worst winter Wasatch had in like 20 years or 30 years, and he just moved to where the snow was. But fortunately, every winter he kept coming back. And so our partnership ensued in the Wasatch Mountains, where he really just helped me just discover more about not just Wasatch itself, but avalanche terrain. And he really valued me as a person, as a partner, and was always promoting my personal growth, which is something different that I had run into. A lot of people, you can follow me through, but Mike really wanted me to learn. He wanted me to be an equal partner, and that was something that was refreshing. And so every winter he would come up, and then we would have these great adventures. But you know, the underlying theme is I was really starting my career, having cocktailed for 15 years and pursued my degree and got a tenure track position. And I really got consumed in work. And my husband ended up retiring the next year. And so I still wanted to pursue this professorship. But, you know, through the years, it was trying to figure out, well, how much money do we need to live on? I'm really having a lot of fulfillment in what I'm actually doing, working with students and working in sustainability, which is also something that Mike ignited, working at sustainability with our students and at the college. And so just seeing what the balance that he was able to achieve with being able to participate in, I think it's funny that Toby talked about recharging, and he was doing solar projects, right? No pun intended, I'm sure. But he just always seemed to have balance. And here I was just working. And it, you know, so he was planting the seed, and it is I mean, and our friendship just developed where I just was counting on him every winter to come up so we could tour together and spend that time and celebrate and the adventures we have, and that it was worth it to hike to the top and take the skis off. And it was okay if we ended up slogging through the willows and the manzanita and getting out and just taking the moment of just embracing where we were at and the beauty and the solitude, all those things. And it was so funny because I was caught up at the climbing gym where we spent some time in the winter, you know, what with the numbers. I want to climb, you know, 512. I want to do this. And Mike was so humble. He was, you know, a solid 510 climber. He didn't mention all the continents and all the mountaineering that he did, like a lot of people. It was just a part of him. And then when we went out into the backcountry together and later into climbing, he just his proficiency and just how natural and just how comfortable he was. So that he's, every time I go into the backcountry, I think of Mike, and his demise spurred a new chapter for our lives as well, because after he passed, I put in for a leave of absence, and we too did a 6-month road trip of climbing and discovery. And when we came back, we decided that I just had gotten tenured in the spring of 2018, but I quit my job.
No way. I didn't realize that.
I did.
You got tenure, literally. Like, that's the dream, right? And you walked away from it. Well, I didn't realize the timing of that.
I did. So December was, this was my last semester. So this winter has been my first winter of not working in 20 years. And so we spent some time till mid-January in Tahoe, but then I went back to Wasatch and I spent a month in Wasatch. And then I did something that I wanted to do for 20 years and did a Canadian hut trip and skied Rogers Pass. And all the while, you know, thinking of Mike and his Canada trips and thinking of the things that I put off, you know, when I'll have time, we'll do this. And now realizing that, you know, life is short. And so the time is now. So we sold our house. We're in our 1,000 square foot bungalow. And I'm looking at December 14th, 2020, because that's going to be the next complete solar eclipse down in Chile. And I'm hoping to get sponsored for a trip to do a mountain bike, which is also something that, thinking of service versus, you know, recreation, trying to bring about awareness with rheumatoid arthritis with the pharmaceutical company of these new drugs that I'll be taking. So all of this has been inspired. I mean, I did feel like, you know, that this is the position I wanted. I really enjoyed working with the students, but the things that were set in place, we now have a sustainability officer. My college signed on to zero carbon by 2050. Those things are in place. And now here we are back in Tahoe, realizing there's just too many things that we want to do. And then just trying to figure out how to achieve balance. Service, right, and travel, and those are the things that Mike inspired within us. And would you like to add to that, my love?
Well, it just, like you were saying, you know, Mike was the embodiment of living the dream and being able to do service and all that. And it's something that I've struggled with all along. You know, I've worked most of my entire life and finally retired, and I'm still just constantly in projects, and it really rang true, or, you know, sank into me when he was living with us in Utah, and I'm working on a kitchen remodel, which that's what I do. I work on houses, I work, you know, and it's just this constant cycle of doing things all the time. And, you know, Mike's like, well, come on, are we going to go out and go skiing? And I'm like, well, I got a kitchen to do, you know? And anyway, it was just kind of it's frustrating for me because he was living the life that I would like to have lived. And I'm still struggling with that because I'm constantly working on projects, and I just trying to get away from that. Anyway, I guess.
At the same time, I want to applaud you guys because you've committed. I mean, like you didn't. So many people say like, one day I will type thing, or I shoulda, woulda, coulda, and live in that world of what if. But you guys took action. I mean, you've moved, you changed your profession. And Colleen, I want to back up to that moment you were just sharing with us too. I mean, tenure is the dream as a professor. I mean, and it's increasingly difficult to get. It's I mean, there's literally thousands of people out there trying to break into academia and get the holy grail of tenure. And literally the grail was handed to you, and you're like, nah, that's not what I want. So like, tell us about that moment, because that takes courage. That's exactly what we're talking about. That boldness, that passion, that realization, like Mike was talking about in that video I just played about, like, what is it that I really want? Having it handed to you and realizing the thing that society and that so many people want isn't the thing that I want. That's not my heart, right? Like, what was going through your mind, and how did you, there must have been some thought telling you I'm crazy. What am I doing? You know, like this is, yeah, to just unpack that moment for us. Could you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I feel like so much, I mean, of the time of that I was at UVU, that was the goal. And that's all my energy was focused in getting tenure. And I didn't really look outside of that. And once I had achieved it, it's more in that we're both in our 50s, and it's that time clock. It's the things that we still want to do. And the realization that I don't need that infrastructure of working at the university to help students. I have 5 students right now that I'm just FaceTiming with, and it's just service, helping them with their math for the homeschooling and things like that. But, it was the balance that I was seeking still. And I could have just, stayed and taught 2 days a week and collected my paycheck. But then I was locked into that time zone, to being able to not have a winter off, to just really the scheduling and not being able to travel to South America, which is something that I've wanted to do. It's all these things that we've talked about doing. And the time clock is going, and the realization of that is that, well, it's, we gave up a substantial portion of our income, but it was that thing that Mike told me when I kept, because we talked about, when would be enough, when would we have enough money? And he's like, why, it's just more important to learn to live on less, to work less rather than want more. And I started thinking about the things I was spending my money on. And I don't really need a lot of things, right? When I think about it, I have my skis, I have my, climbing equipment. So do I want to work so I could, I don't know, get massages, or maybe I could do something about my face and get some Botox, or, the disposable income, I didn't need it, right? And I know I can still help people, and I can help people in my community in Tahoe. And so that is what we decided, is that we can live on less, and there is no going back for me, because of I got a very unique position at a university, being not holding a terminal degree that I can't go back to. And so it's just moving forward. I still want to work in sustainability. One of the most important things for me is this election cycle for 2020. I want to be able to try and change this administration. And part of that, I remember Mike coming out from spending this time in Canada right after the election. And it was just also shocking for him, right? How things had changed, or coming back from India rather. And I want to be an agent of change. And he's somebody that inspired that within me. And seeing that there are things that I can do locally and then nationally, that's something that's really important to me. So again, it's the balance.
So what I'm hearing about you is that, like, you're just driven by your heart. I felt like your heart was just pulling you forward towards these decisions. but I must imagine there must have been some fear like pulling you back the other way, right?
Absolutely.
How did you overcome that fear? Can you tell us a little bit about that internal process that allowed you to quiet that fear? And then, because so many of us are feeling fear right now, fear is such a powerful motivator, but you follow the heart forward rather than let the fear pull you back.
Because I just knew that it was enough. I mean, I've had, I mean, I didn't graduate college till I was 40. I just remember that the thing about the other thing that Mike told me was the mountain range that you fall in love with at first, that those are the ones that you return to. And for me, it was the Sierras. And I wanted to return to living in the mountains. I wanted to return to not worrying about the air quality. And the fear was assuaged just realizing, in reflecting back, when I did live in Tahoe previously, I lived in a garage for 10 years. I had low overhead. I don't need the things that additional income would have supported. And so living simpler. We have 1,000 square foot house. Understanding that our time is more valuable at this point in our lives, and that teaching is something that I can go back to.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I want to totally applaud you for that. Scott, I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
Oh, no, that's all right. It's just this whole pandemic thing is what's rattling our cage. When you're locked down, you're like, well, now I can't go out and do some of these things. It's like, wait, what's, it's just more of the timeline thing. It's like, you got to do it now. You can't wait. How many times people are like, well, I'll get to it later. And, and sometimes just it doesn't happen, whether it's.
But it's not just the physical stuff of getting out. There's the other stuff that I want to learn about, that I want to study. There's I was unpacking my books yesterday. I mean, I need to cultivate the mind as well as the body. And this time is allowing us to do that. And when I say I can go back to teaching, I can go back to teaching not as a 10-year position, but if I need to supplement our income, or if I want to, go back in 10 years, I do feel like that's something that I'll be able to do. But there's so much that the peacefulness, the feeling centered, the feeling balanced, those are the things that I want for us.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that story. That's incredible. And that's actually the perfect transition to Nico there, because again, we're kind of, I like how we're transitioning here, because back to like that youthful energy, like when I look at you, Nico, you're probably the youngest out of all of us. And, you're literally Mike's offspring carrying his blood forward. But even though you're so young, I still see that just what Colleen was talking about, that peacefulness, that centeredness, and I love following you on Facebook, even though I don't get to see you very often. You're always posting these really mindful, deep things. And the way I see, like, even just you're sitting in Zazen right now, and there's just this centeredness about you. And I see that in those dances that you post, and, you're always doing yoga and these meditational hikes. And I just want to celebrate that piece of you too. You are so centered and wise beyond your years. You just radiating it. I'm sure, you're struggling on, like all of us, and working on it, but like, you're so far ahead of the curve. My God, it's impressive. So I would love for you just to share a little bit, where you're at.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much to everyone who has shared so far. Thank you, Toby. Thank you, Scott and Colleen. And a huge, huge thank you to Chris for organizing this. This is absolutely just like in total flow with what's going on for me internally and in my dream space and in the spirit world. There's like, it's all kind of, it's in like a total river right now with everything that's gone on in my own life over the last month or so. Mike actually came to me in a dream about 2 weeks ago, something like that, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And he wasn't like, yo, bug Chris for the videos, but something about it, he was like, I was living with him in this dream, and it was really beautiful. And it made me go, okay, I'm going to reach out to Chris, and I'm going to get this audio. So I actually went hiking out in El Dorado Canyon, where another one of his really good friends, Lee, had taken me a couple weeks before, and it had just snowed. So I was like hiking along alone in the snow. and listening, I had my phone just like on my chest. And so it was literally like we were on a hike together. So I felt his voice, I heard his voice, but I really felt his presence as close as my breath. And it led me to really delve deep in his work and my spirit world. So yeah, going all the way back, it's hard to know where to really begin, because I literally met him when I was I met him when I was in my mother's womb. And my whole story with knowing Mike is incredibly complex. And it brings up a lot of feelings of, I feel like this duality is really woven into my story. It's a really beautiful allegory. I feel like a living eclipse of something really unlikely. Eclipses are rare, and I feel really grateful for my life. Like, I'm this total eclipse of someone who represents one thing and someone who represents another thing. And I realized that duality exists within me, and it exists within everybody. And my role here on this earth is to kind of, without any amount of judgment on either end, it's like point to that duality. And that duality, I think, is one of fear and love, contraction and expansion. And my real role, I've realized, like, only in the last couple of weeks, my role on this planet is to create videos, dances, art, just material, stories, books, anything, and share this message. So I'm absolutely so grateful for this this time to be handed a microphone and to be given a stage. I was working with a startup for a little while in Austin that I ended up quitting. And as I quit, I was like, no, I'm willingly handing away my microphone. But something that I learned this year is that when you lose something or when you give it away, it always comes back to you in another form. Especially if you're giving something away, that's not in alignment with you. It comes back to you in another form. This last year has been incredibly transformative, but really the last 3 years has been incredibly transformative in my life. My whole relationship with Mike has been predominantly over emails, text messages, some letters. I've had the chance to go back and reread, letters I wrote to him when I was a kid. That kind of stopped for a while. But then it picked back up again when I was 17. And my English teacher, Emily, who I'm still friends with today, she assigned me this assignment. I mean, the whole class got it, and it was write about your earliest memory. And that, kind of spurred something in me. It was like, okay, I'm going to look at this part of myself that I've been shoving down, this identity. I was really raised in kind of like a very different way. It was not really my natural state of being, and it led to like me shoving a lot down, including my gender, sexuality, just my total unique artistness. I shut down that a lot too, kind of grappling with it. But this essay, I ended up writing 10 pages or so, maybe more, and I shared it with him. And that led to, the next decade, really from 17 to 27 when he passed. We would write back and forth, and we had a lot of healing to do. On my end, I had to slowly kind of, on my own terms, like set aside everything that I had thought about him, that I was told, and just really open my heart and trust and really learn. And pretty immediately, as soon as I opened that door, I was like, whoa, there's this person out there that is strikingly so much like me in ideology, little idiosyncrasies like we both juggle. But yeah, there was just this being that was like waiting for me, this mentor. I saw him as like to be totally revered. I was like, whoa, this person is a god. Like this person has something totally right. And so, you know, we were getting fairly close. Like when I was nearing my time in college, the end of my time in college, I was like, I don't know what to do. Maybe I should go to grad school. I'm not really sure. How do I make money? The worries that go through everybody's head. And I shaped my whole life. I mean, I'm really grateful that he did the whole growing up early. I just listened to audio of this. Growing up, getting a partner pretty early, getting a job right out of college to make money, being an engineer, working in a cubicle, doing that until he was my age now. I just turned 30. I'm grateful for that path for him because that led to me basically right off the bat knowing that I wanted to do something that was not that, you know, I was like, I kind of grew up with this, like, not a cubicle, whatever it is, not a cubicle. Like, I am not going to work inside. I'm not going to do that whole thing. I'm not going to be concerned about, you know, I really took that message to heart. I was like, okay, I've got to find a way to work and play at the same time. And that really has shaped my whole world. That was like the number one lesson I really took from him, as well as this, this spirituality. And it's hard to say what's innate, just genes perhaps, or, you know, him spurring these questions in me led to me really delving into that. Just our emails were about like morality, ethics, good and evil. What do you believe in? Is there an afterlife? Where did we come from? Like before we were born, what do we die into? And I remember him talking about, and this is really cool, I've really delved into this last few weeks. He said, I mean, this is my own voodoo woo-woo, I think is what he said. But he said, every small bug, like ladybug I pick up, I feel the thrum and the entire universe inside that one being. And that's my connection to the whole world. We're all so deeply connected. And I've been really interested just this last 2 weeks in the fractal holographic nature of the universe, and really reopening the YouTube channel of Terrence McKenna and Alan Watts. Have just really been delving into that and also the physics of it. So hearing his words at that time really shaped my life. I was for 5 years an outdoor educator in Austin, working with 4 and 5-year-olds, and they would run around in their underwear and I would paint their bodies, and we would have dance parties and we'd go hiking and catch lizards and catch bugs. Like I have a tattoo of a grasshopper. Like I just got to be a kid for the first time really when I was 25 to 30. But then something still wasn't quite right. You know, I was like, I'm not in a cubicle. I'm in the woods with all these kids, but there's still something like really deeply missing. And I think it was just like the next step was to take that play and really give it to myself and allow myself to be whatever it is that I am. You know, it's been a really healing journey. His passing led to some really deep sorrow and grief, and what am I even doing with my life? And for a while I stayed in Austin with my partner, but that ended when I went to my first Burning Man event. It's called Flipside, and all this stuff happened that weekend. I lost my keys, I lost my contacts, I lost my Nico backpack that he gave me when I was 11, which is what I named myself after. If you're wondering, I named myself after this backpack that he gave me when I was 11. I lost so many different things that weekend, and each one was a lesson. That's why I say everything that you lose comes back to you. I eventually found all those things, but it was a really good precursor. And when I was watching the effigy burn, I was like, my life is about to change in a really big way. I came back from that weekend, and my partner decided it was time for our relationship to be over. And I was like, okay, I was just reading Don Miguel Ruiz, and this sentence stood out to me, and it was, if you're motivated by love rather than fear, that's what you should do. You should always be motivated by love rather than fear. And so I asked her, I said, okay, is this motivated by love? And she said, yes. And I said, okay, this is absolutely the right course of action. I support this decision. And I went home that night and I didn't sleep, and I just juggled and danced. And I pretty much did that for the next like 4 months. All I did was dance. I just like kind of stopped. I mean, I ate granola and I ate some nuts and stuff. I ate some bananas, but I really just danced. I just fell in love with this surrender of movement. I mean, it's strange. You think surrender, you think total stillness, but I surrendered to this like force that was in me. I mean, to dance, you really need the music of other people. And I think dance is such a beautiful allegory for life. You know, what I've learned this year is that to heal, you sweat, you know, you move, you're climbing, you're biking, running. And for me, it's really in yoga and dance that I find my Shri. I find the beauty and I find the surrender. So I just began dancing. I really fell in love with ecstatic dance, which is where you get a whole bunch of people, put them in a room. There's like world music and some beats. There's not really any like pop music or anything. And it's just infectious, you know, everybody's dancing. It's like 100 people or something. And I was going to that in Austin, and I happened to be at ACL, and there's a woman who turns next to me in the crowd, and I was dancing with Lizzo, and she was like, you know, it was like a message from God or whatever, or what have you. She said, Austin will always be here for you. The whole world is out there. Go. And then she disappeared into the crowd, and I was like, who are you? And you know, I think like the next day or something like that, Lee said, hey, do you want to come to Santa Fe and be at my house while I'm in South America? And I was like, yes. I was like immediately typed YES. I was just like, okay, I have to go. So that's what kind of got me out to the Rockies, and immediately I started saying the whole Pono prayer and hiking every single night and absorbing that sunset from New Mexico and just like letting the land heal me. And that's what I'm gonna keep doing, is just like letting the land heal me, creating art, dancing, and bringing what I learned from the kids and from Mike into the world, just spreading that message of living with presence and purpose and joy, like this constant awareness. I forget who said it, but it was, if you look at your life from the point of death, your whole life takes on a totally different meaning. You know, people I see on message boards saying, I'm bored, I don't know what to do, I'm just totally, I've watched all the Netflix I can, and I don't understand that. And my message I really want to like throw and infuse into the world is, there's a miracle in every single moment. You know, if you view your life as like you're being given a
Oh, looks like we lost Nico there. Let's give her a second.
I will share that Mike and I went to ecstatic dance as well in Salt Lake City, which was really fun.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it's just interesting that she got a message there. I went with my best dance partner, Worm, who's been my best friend, and then Mike, and yeah, we just gave in to the dance. And I do see it as giving in, because you're releasing your movement to the music, and I see it as expressing music three-dimensionally through your body. Dance is very important to me. Yeah, and it was to Mike as well.
It's funny how these interconnections work. I love it. I love it. Well, you know, we have another member has joined us. We have a fifth here. Timing is almost perfect, because we just have a few references of our southern neighbors. So, and I love this too, because we haven't really had a chance to bring in the whole solar side of stuff, because that was such a vital part of Mike, where we've really explored the mountains and the deserts and that outdoor adventure side of him. But I'd love to hear, Carol, you speak to that solar piece, which, and Solar Energy, SEI, Solar Energy International, and, how you guys really, one of the things I loved about Mike is he genuinely, he felt, so many people, say their beliefs, but he lived his beliefs. He genuinely, believed in the environment. He genuinely believed in solar. He honestly felt guilty driving around a car or flying in a plane. And I don't, meet many people who live that to the extent where he was like, I'm going to devote my whole life to creating energy that doesn't hurt the planet and aligning his actions with his worldview. So Carol, can you launch from there?
Yeah. Hey guys, it's really nice to see you. It's strange to be live on Facebook, so we don't know who else is watching or listening. So hey everybody, I'm so happy you did this, Chris. Thank you so much. This comes in such a timely. It's just so timely. It's wonderful to just get back to certain things that Mike taught us. I would say us, that are so important right now, when there's so much fear and so much uncertainty. And I would say, just to share, when Mike and I met, we met through Solar Energy International, as you said, and he was my mentor in solar energy. And we worked together for several years, training other people, bringing knowledge to people who just wanted to learn. And it was wonderful to be mentored by him in all that technical aspect, but that was really small compared to everything else he infused into my life, which was well beyond solar. And I would say for me, my relationship with Mike was a lot about recognizing my comfort zones and kicking them and throwing them out the window and leaving them behind. When we're about 2 years into us teaching together, we were taken to South America to teach there in the Atacama Desert. And I was in a very lonely, dark space, and we were sharing an apartment there. And it was just wonderful to share space, time, and lots of conversation with my friend who was laughing at my comfort zones. He's like, come on, you're just too comfortable. You're lonely, or you're afraid because you want to be in that little shell that is safe. Just get out of it, kick it, just destroy it. And in many conversations, he infused that courage. It's not losing your fear, but just infusing courage into your decisions and living a life of passion and following those passions. And got to say, he thankfully helped me a lot to get a divorce and get away from a relationship that was not positive and was not allowing me to grow and get the word out about solar and really teach people and share knowledge and be very open about that, be an open book about what he taught me. And that was just wonderful. But in so many different ways, he really was an empowering person. He every time I was with him, I felt more empowered. He provided that. If you were afraid of something, he would infuse courage. If you were feeling lonely, he would infuse love and comfort with a hug. And beyond that, that was just the beginning. Beyond that, it was more about empowering you to serve and empowering you to be a changing agent, an agent of change. Sorry, English second language, an agent of change. And as we've discussed, his passing was a big moment, a very difficult moment, full of grief, but also just a recognition of how quickly time goes and how, as you guys have all shared, it's like, so it was a reality check of, okay, it's now and or not, or never. So do it now. And since then, I've been more courageous about volunteering much more actively. I've been able to find the channels to volunteer in a more effective way beyond my solar work with SEI, which is actual work. I guess from us, I'm the only one who hasn't quit our job since Mike passed. I have taken on other jobs though, and a lot more volunteering. And I've had the opportunity to help people in Puerto Rico after the hurricanes. I've had the opportunity to help people in Kenya, in very remote areas that needed water. And it's been so fulfilling and so wonderful to have met this amazing person who showed me a way of life that is hard to embrace, because it takes leaving comfort zones for sure, but it is so worth it and so rewarding. And yeah, he showed me mountains, he showed me camping, showed me guerrilla camping particularly, and I've really embraced that and try to get out almost every weekend. As Scott was saying, it's like, what do we do now? This is insane, I can't go out. Or you kind of still do against the rules sometimes, maybe, because you just need it. But it's just his thing for me was comfort zones, and realizing where they are, where your boundaries lie, and then finding the courage to step away from them and well beyond them and seeing what that brings. And it's so far always a rewarding experience.
Mm-hmm. Now that's I love that you bring that up, because it's a theme that's sort of reconnected through a lot of the conversations we've had today, is how, life presents us these challenges. And that's that moment where we have a choice. Do I want to grow and move, follow my heart forward, or do I want to retreat out of that fear back to the comfortable? And I see that as, that's something that Mike taught me so much, of that life is so much more rewarding when you're willing to take that risk and go into that, lean into that fear, into that discomfort. One of my favorite quotes is a mountaineering quote from Lou Whitaker, said, risk is a fundamental part of living a full life. And Mike really embodied that, and I met him at this similar point when I was 21 and trying to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And I thought I was going to be an investment banker. And that was the comfort zone of the world I grew up in. And that Mike lived this other example and said, hey, there's something bigger out there, but it's going to be scary. I have to lean into it and make it happen. So I love how you speak to that. Is there any other points about comfort? What is that? What do you guys think about that idea of leaning into our discomfort and how that has served our lives?
Well, I love that Caro brought up being an agent of change, right? But working through fear itself is actually transformational. And what she said about pushing the boundaries is really beautiful, because you think this boundary exists, but you put it in place yourself, and then you move past it, and then you've shifted. And that's why I just really appreciated so much what you said, and appreciated so much what Nico shared as well, as in her transformation. Love you. Mm-hmm.
About those boundaries, something he was really, I would say, nurturing with was my boundaries, and his boundaries were in such different places. I'm no climber. I'm afraid of heights. There's no way. So I'm a hiker, and I love the mountains just as much. I just won't get to certain places. But sometimes he would just make fun of hiking so boring. It's boring. But when he realized I would feel like, oh shit, am I just too boring? Feel like, no, this is your boundary. Respect that boundary, and also just encourage everybody around you to find their own boundaries. It was never mocking. It was never disrespectful. It was more, it was even more empowering, because it was my own boundaries, and he helped me embrace that and not compare ourselves with other people, for sure.
No, I think the empowerment is so, for me, it was such a theme in our relationship, and empowerment in so many different levels, and in gaining knowledge, and not just following, and just the beauty of just being and just and taking the time to reflect on where you are and not being in such a hurry. And yeah, beautiful. And meeting up with Toby in Kentucky and the Wind River Range where we hadn't been in 18 years. Like, why did we spend so long apart from that? And again, that was, Mike was the catalyst, his memory, and, you know, just it's such a beautiful place and space. And then again, just trying to combine that service, balance, harmony, love.
Love.
He's still there pushing us all. We're all thinking about this, so obviously his presence is here.
Yeah, he's still here, absolutely. In so many ways. And something that's really come up for me recently, and then I feel compelled to share, is people's judgments cannot hurt you. That was like one of the main lessons he gave to me. People's judgments cannot hurt you at all, but your fear of their judgments can. Mm-hmm. Your fear of their judgments can keep you in a life that's this small. And so trying to really step into that feeling, like people's judgments can't hurt you. Just push yourself to the challenges that you need to meet, and ask yourself to like question and expand your boundaries at all times, but with gentleness, you know, with purpose.
It's fascinating you bring that up. I mean, because I'm just nodding along about that power of the fear of judgment. I mean, I did a whole TED talk about that, and I saw just how it impacts. It's the number one predictor of any team's performance is how much fear of judgment we have within a group, any group, whether you're talking about a group of friends, a family unit, a sports team, a work team. Mm-hmm. That's it. And it's all a construct in our mind that the level mm-hmm. of trust, the level we have, that feeling that I won't be judged, that I can authentically be me, that's the number one predictor of that group's performance, of how well the actual outcomes they're going to produce. And you know, mm-hmm. I was approaching it from like that came out of research done by Google. They spent 5 years and $20 million trying to figure out what's the number one predictor of an employee's performance. Is just that, is that fear of judgment. Mm-hmm. Do I'm worried about what people think about me? But I love how you brought it to such a personal thing. And that is something that, you know, I struggle with all the time, even putting together this Facebook Live. I'm like, oh, you know, it's like, I've never done a Facebook Live before. That's a little scary. Like, you know, and there are all these little voices, these little gremlins start hopping on your shoulder and start talking to you, right?
Mm-hmm. But I will say, you've done such a great job of interweaving everybody's story and adding fluidity. I did listen to your TED Talk, Chris, and you're really talented in being able to articulate and reignite the memories and the passion to, you know, to keep it moving it forward. Mm-hmm. So thank you.
Yeah, I also watched your TED Talk. It was so good. Everybody should watch it who's watching this.
Well, cool. So I would like to wrap this up. To circle back to Mike, I want to play one more video, a short one. Before I do those, are there any other final thoughts? Anybody would like to share? Like Toby, for example, we haven't heard from you. You got to be our opener, but you know, can I poke you just to share one thought that's been on your mind, or something you know that you've been thinking of?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks everybody for sharing your experience and your wisdom. And, really grateful for that. Yes, I mean, you've all said it in your own ways, and I want to acknowledge that Mike had this sort of knowing glimmer in his eye, this awareness of the irony of the conventions and the constructs that are so. And it takes a lot of unlearning and deconstructing to just be ourselves, you know, and to lead with kindness and with empathy for others and compassion. And and to let go of that fear of judgment. In doing so is so liberating, and to acknowledge our role in the world. And we all have a special talent or gift or some unique quality. And just simple as just living that truth is, quite a journey for some of us to get to, and continues to be. But Mike was certainly and continues to be an empowerer, one who empowers that gift to come through in each of us. And I'm really grateful for that lesson that continues to come through. So.
And I want to thank all you guys I feel the same gratitude, towards Mike and towards all of us. And I just invite all you guys to continue being, because you're paying that message forward. It was scary for you to sign up for this live and to tell your story here. And I invite you to just keep making the same choices that you are, and keep living the lives that you guys are, and to keep sharing this message. And the more that we all kind of prop each other up and remind ourselves of its importance, that just gives us that courage to keep moving forward. And so I just want to extend my gratitude for that. So this has been awesome, really, truly. And so to wrap it up, I think I'd like to circle back to Mike, and he's going to tell when I first met him, as I mentioned, he'd just come down from 6 months up in Tibet. And as I shared a tent with him, month after month of this climbing expedition in Nepal, he just told me stories. And those, to my 21-year-old eyes, those just lit up my world, that there was something bigger out there, the adventure and travel and living through passion and service to others. You could combine all of these things in a way that the cubicle can't. And so I have that, I'm gonna play with you some photography from his solar projects. He did, numerous, I think I totaled it up, and I think it was like 2 years of his, I forget now. At one point we told him how much of his life he'd spent in the Himalaya. And it was into the years. It's remarkable. Yeah. And so it'll be his photography and him just telling the story of that first installation that he did.
Oh, our first night out, there's another town in western central Tibet called Shigatse, which is the home of the Panchanlamba. Well, most people would probably spell it Shigatse, and it's, I think, the third largest town in Tibet. So we spent a night there, and actually spent about 3 hours at the monastery the next day, and they were having a dance festival, so we got to see all these Tibetan dancers in costume. Some of the best cultural photos I've taken in Tibet were at that time. Monks blowing these horns that are like 20 feet long, resting up on these little carved trestles, and all the chanting and the dancing, and all kinds of Tibetan folk coming for the party and sitting in a big crowd and passing around yak butter tea. Yeah, it was pretty sweet. So that was a nice little send-off before hitting the wilderness.
When you get to the monastery, what was that like? 6 days of travel.
It was amazing. Our last afternoon there, the Jeep got buried in the mud up to its axles, and the truck was in front of us, and we didn't realize that we got stuck. So it took us about 4 hours to dig out. Some nomads wandered by, and they were laughing and helping and making a mess and throwing mud. And so it was probably
nomads. Are these guys riding yaks, and were they riding?
They walk, basically.
Just walking.
Yeah, they just walk. They've got maybe some goats with them, or maybe they're just by themselves, just wandering around. And, yeah, they just show up out of nowhere. I don't know. It's like a deserted, barren place, and then suddenly there's a person there, and then suddenly there's 3 people there. But they helped. They were scouting around through this swampy area trying to find rocks so that we could, get a little trail of rocks going down this mud puddle to get out. So we didn't get to the monastery till probably midnight, and we're fried, and we're covered with mud, and it's 16,000 feet or whatever, and it's cold, and we're wet. And we show up and there's buildings, and then like you see a candle in the window and then there's 5 candles, and then all these monks just pour out of these buildings. There's like 80 of them, and every single one of them shakes our hand at least twice, and tashidele, tashidele, tashidele. It was surreal. It was a really groovy experience. It was way high. It was nice.
So what were you thinking while this is all going on?
I wasn't thinking anything, man. You get to that point where you're sort of zombie, zoned out, exhausted, exhilarated. Your thinking dialogue mind is just shut off, and you're just taking it all in.
And so they must be psyched to see you guys.
Oh, it was crazy. Yeah, I think there was a group of like 4 French people who had been to that monastery for one night once before. They were all devotees of this Rinpoche, and they snuck in this side trip. But aside from those 4 French people for one night, we were the first non-Chinese, non-Tibetans they'd ever seen.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Wow. So they must have been just blown away by you guys.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, people with blonde hair, and a woman who traveled out, and yeah, it was a new thing for them.
So how did they welcome you?
Exuberantly. I mean, they're not yahoos, but there is a certain kind of like cowboy mentality in Western Tibet, and even in the monks, who are typically very gentle, soft-spoken people, they're pretty rowdy for monks, and just hollering and running around and pretty much forcing tea down our throats, and just trying to get us set up and making us feel welcome, and getting fires lit so we can get a little bit warmer and drier. Yeah, it was a party.
So thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you for putting this together. Sasha really enjoyed it too.
Oh.
Thank you so much, Chris, and thank you guys. It's been just heartwarming to see you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's great to see everybody. Yes.
Stay well, everybody.
There's no time to waste.
All right. Love to everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.